Hi, I'm Mari White with Jesus Daily, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with expert Nathan Tabor of handlinglife.org, and we are going to be talking about the challenges of coming back to God. So I know in my life I've had challenges with coming back to God, and it was usually in reference to my circle of friends. What has your experience been, and what could you tell us as far as guidance?
Yeah, and when you're at that point, it seems really tough, right?
Right.
The number one thing that I see in my own life and in other people's lives is the mind games. What are other people going to say? How am I going to deal with the embarrassment of it?
Right.
All those little things that come to our mind that at the time seem like huge things to overcome. But when you look back, was it as hard?
No, not at all. Not at all.
But when you were there,
yes.
When I was there, and anyone who's currently there, it's like, I can't do this. I can't overcome. But then after you look after it and you look back, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
I really should have handled that sooner.
Right.
And so, if you're in that position, you're at that point, which I was and you were as well, and everybody's been there. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you're there a lot of times.
Yes.
Oh, sometimes you're there daily. Should I do the right thing? Should I, go back and tell that person I was sorry because I had the wrong attitude?
Yes.
Or I said that a little too harsh. Those are the little things. But should I go apologize to my spouse? Should I go apologize to a family member? Mm-hmm. Should I, work on this act of sin in my life? Mm-hmm. Those are the bigger things. But, Mark, what happens with that when we don't address it, when we don't handle it, it starts to build spaces and walls, and it takes us further away from God.
It makes it harder. Right.
But at the time, just today, I had this, you see that little tiny spot in my finger?
Yes.
That was a splinter.
Okay.
That I got last night.
It looks painful.
Horrible, right? I mean, just huge. But last night and this morning, every time I touched something, reached into my pocket, shook someone's hand at church, you know what I felt? That tiny little splinter.
Right.
So mass of my body is 0.0000001%, right?
Right.
But that's how sin is. That's how, when we're out of balance, mm-hmm. when something's going on in our life and we're not handling it the right way, or we're not even trying to address the problem, it's what takes our focus.
Right.
So if we've got 4 or 5 things in our life that are all going the right direction, our job's going well, our bank account's going well, our kids are doing well, our health is doing well, but we're not right with our spouse, or we don't have a spouse, so that's not an issue. Our job's going well, mm-hmm. our health is going well, mm-hmm. but we're focused on money all the time.
Yes.
What becomes the thing that makes us the most stressed, the most misery? What becomes the little thing in our life that becomes the big thing, the thing we focus on the most?
That's between us and God.
Right. And the only way to resolve those things is to come to God. Mm-hmm. But in our minds, the mind game side, when I have an issue with something, or I'm struggling with something, my desire is for me to fix it.
True. Yes. It's my first thought too.
Right.
Yeah.
I can do it. Well, what's the number one thing that we in our lives have the biggest challenge with, if we're honest, is our pride. Mm-hmm. I was born and you were born and everyone was born as a prideful, egotistical, self-centered individual. The relationship with Jesus Christ gives us the option to live in a spiritual, in a God, in a Christ-like manner, but we still have to fight our flesh.
Yes. Over and over and over again.
On a daily. It's not turn the light switch on in the morning and deal with it. But when Satan comes into our lives, he comes as a little tiny thing. He comes to us as something that we desire. Satan doesn't come to us as a little, red pitchfork-tailed He comes to us as something that we want.
Right.
And that want pulls us away from God. So when our pride comes into play and we don't deal with it, it's not long before bitterness or lack of forgiveness comes into play. And it's not long before patience is non-existent, because I want it and I want it now, especially today. What defines us as being successful in our lives today?
Right.
Material things.
Yep.
Is material things evil? Is money evil? No.
No.
The love of money. And so we find ourselves in our society today, in the Christian evangelical, some of the meanest, cruelest, unhappiest, look like they've been sucking on lemons. You go to a church and they sing a song and it's like no joy.
Right.
And I look back at my life, and I fought doing this for a number of years, because to tell someone this is how you need to do something, that's easy.
Mm-hmm.
But to tell someone, hey, the reason you should do this is because I did this. I did it my way, good old Frank Sinatra song, and this is how it turned out, and it wasn't what I was expecting.
Right.
So for a number of years, I was one of those Christians that if someone else looked at me, well, if that's a Christian, I don't want any of that.
It's hard.
It's hard. And so we as a society, as an evangelical Christian, we're supposed to find joy in all circumstances. We're supposed to show the love of Christ to others. We're supposed to be focused on God. But when we don't, we apply our own wisdom, we get all the conflict and misery and anxiety. But then when we get to that point, just like Jonah had to be thrown out of the boat,
right, to be able to...
You know what happens next? When the whale swallowed Jonah, was it God punishing Jonah or God delivering him?
It's delivering him. Through punishment.
Well, it was God delivering, because if the whale would...
Right.
But, growing up...
Exactly.
And when you ask most people that, and you had to think about it for a second, we just think it was punishment.
Right.
But if the whale hadn't have been there, Jonah would have drowned.
Yeah.
So when we go away from God on our own path and our own will and our own mindset, and then we say, I'm going to turn back to God, whether we do it on our own or are thrown out of the boat, there are consequences. But immediately when that happens, most people, and myself, say, well, why is God punishing me? Maybe
Right.
God's not punishing us. Maybe God's giving us a well so we don't drown, so we can get back to land and do what He's called us to do.
Yes, and
But
you go through this in the...
Go through this in the book. How to... And this is just from a practical side. This isn't I'm not a preacher. I'm not a theologian. I'm not a, say expert in the sense of been there and done that and have the t-shirt, hope to never do it again. But this is a book. This is videos to help others. This is not judging. This is not condemning. This is, Ecclesiastes talks about 3 chords. In Proverbs, seek wisdom and counsel from others. Had I done that early on, I wouldn't have gotten to where I was in my life. And I could have avoided some of the things that I've gone through.
Right.
So as part of it's that, most of it is, hey, if you're not where you're supposed to be with God, let me tell you how I went through the process of dealing with pride and bitterness and forgiveness and patience and applying wisdom and the daily application. Most people that I meet know what they need to do. Down deep somewhere, there's something in the back of their mind that they know they need to be doing. They just need somebody to come along and say, you know what, it's worth it. And I'm willing to help you. There's others that are willing to help you. And the sooner you do it, the sooner you can get to where God wants you to be.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your words of wisdom with others through these videos.
Yeah. And I know, real quick, I know you've just been through some things in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Did it make it easier when you had a relationship with God?
Oh, absolutely. It's the main thing that kept me sane.
And before you went through these health issues that you went through, if someone would have explained it to you, you'd have just been like, mm-hmm.
I would have been able to understand to the best of my ability or had a little bit of empathy, but once you've really experienced it, it makes a big difference. So for sure.
My biggest mind game was, if I give God control, I won't have control.
Yes, that's really hard to let go of that control.
And so I'm going to say this, and people who have been there will understand it. And if they haven't, they won't. And I didn't really understand it 4 years ago. The more control I give to God, the more control I get.
Okay.
Because when I'm giving God control and doing things the way He's laid out, I'm avoiding the conflict, majority of it. I'm avoiding the majority of the stress and the anxiety.
Yes.
Because I'm where He wants me to be and not doing the things the way I should want to do it. So, but it doesn't make sense. Even today, when I say it to people who've been there, either through health or they're like, I get it.
Yeah.
People who haven't, just kind of a blank stare.
Yes.
So if anybody's struggling with that thought, well, if I give God control, my life's going to be boring, or it's going to be full of a bunch of laws and regulations. I used to have those thoughts.
Right. Rules. I'll be judged.
Judged. You know,
Limited.
It's not that way.
It's not.
It's not. And what I tell people is, if you're miserable where you are today, and stress and anxiety and conflict is ruling your life, why not at least give God's way a try?
Right.
It can't
get worse.
It can't get worse,
exactly.
Right?
High five on that.
So I just encourage people, try it God's way.
Huh.
It can't be any worse than where you currently are.
Right. Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And let's check out some of these videos. That's great.
Good stuff.
You reminded me of a point where I was so mad and so pissed off when I found out the second time that I had to go through all this again. I was so pissed, and I was like so mad that I was like, you know what? I don't get it, but I'm going to accept it, and I'm going to do it your way, and however you want this healing to happen, it's not the way I want it to happen, but however you want this healing to happen, I'm going to accept it, and I'm going to go with it, and I'm going to do all this crap, and I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. And I didn't want to do it, but I chose to like mentally and emotionally like let go and stop trying. I was trying to still think I had some control over my healing when I didn't. So I was like, if this is what you want me to do, I surrender.
You've seen the memes of get better or get better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can either get better at God or you can get better with God.
Right.
So when you were going through that process, if you had gone into your radiation and chemo and doctors with a horrible attitude,
right, it wouldn't have.
And they didn't know Christ, or they were a new Christian, or they were struggling with their own. And see, that's the biggest issue that I see is people aren't convinced by words these days. They're convinced by actions. And you might not know this side of heaven. Did the way you handled your treatment affect someone's life that they came to know Jesus?
You know, I think it did.
Or maybe it planted a seed.
Absolutely.
Hey, what's different about her? Why did she handle this better when these didn't?
Right.
And at some point, those are the seeds we plant, is how we deal with situations. Mm-hmm. You ask waitresses when their rudest customers are, do you know what they'll say? Sunday after church.
Oh, that's so sad.
But it's the truth.
Wow.
But we're called to be higher than that.
Mm.
We're called to be better than that. So when you were going through all that you went through, you could have come out healed, but with a horrible attitude towards God.
True. Saying, why didn't you prevent this from happening?
Yeah.
Or why did you let this happen? Or, right.
Why me? When you get into the why me or the what ifs, you're going down the wrong path.
Mm-hmm. And there are thoughts that will come in your head.
Yeah.
It'll be like, why? This person eats this and doesn't do this, and they have a bad attitude, but I do this, and you have to check yourself. You have to check those thoughts. And
or that person smoked for 20 years.
absolutely,
they don't have any cancer,
absolutely.
and I have
right.
a nasal cancer that
right.
I've never smoked.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
That's all, but it's human, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a fair question. I used to think that asking God a question was sacrilegious.
It was just disrespectful.
Disrespectful. Because he is holy.
Right.
Then I started looking into scriptures, and Jesus asked God a question when he was praying in the Garden of Gethsemane.
Mm-hmm.
The southern version, or my version, is, hey, Father, if you got somebody else, I'm down with that. Peace out. I'll go on. But if it's your will,
right.
I'll do this. And we as Christians and as humans, where we get is, God, why me? Why not someone else?
Mm.
But then we leave off the second part. But
yeah.
if it's your will,
right.
then there's some reason you have me here. Don't know why. And you might not ever know why.
Mm-hmm.
This side of heaven, why
Mm-hmm.
God put you through that. But now you have a story.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what changes people's hearts and minds? Is when we tell them what God has done for us. When we praise Him. When we tell our story. And so, for me, thankfully have not been through cancer. Mine is a story of vulnerability. It's okay, one, to be a man, and two, admit that you're struggling with something.
Right.
Since the days of the marble men today have been told, be tough and strong, right, and don't show your weaknesses. But that's not how we should be. I mean, yes, we still have to be strong. We still have to be, diligent in what we're doing. But it's okay to tell someone, hey, I'm not having a very good day today. I'm not having a very good week, or I'm not, just the burdens of life is pushing me down.
Yeah, we can't keep that aside.
Yeah, we can't keep, but we do.
We do, all the time.
Women do it too.
Mm-hmm.
And then it blows up. And when it blows up, then it's almost over, right?
Right.
So, I'm glad the Lord brought you through all your health
Me too.
issues, and you're just thinking, how could you use that story
mm-hmm.
to impact others who are going through what you went through?
There was something that I heard yesterday that caught my attention. It was about miracles, and I know I had a lot of thoughts about, well, where's my miracle? I want to be healed. Poof, I don't want to have to go through this. I want to go back and have my scans clear and have this and this. And it was interesting saying, you can have a miracle just like that, or you can have a miracle through the process. And the miracle just like that opens the person up to a huge, tremendous opportunity for a relationship with God.
Right.
Or the process and then the miracle, you still have that relationship.
Right.
Does
and
it
even
mean,
if you don't have the miracle,
mm-hmm.
you still have the relationship.
Oh, and that's the most important thing.
Right.
Absolutely.
That I say is
and what is the miracle?
What is the miracle?
Right.
Which comes to the joy in James. Everybody says, it's not the joy of the circumstance. It's the joy in the circumstance. Well, how can I have joy in cancer?
Mm-hmm.
There's no joy in cancer.
Mm-hmm.
The joy is that when the Lord calls you home, your cancer will not exist anymore.
Right.
When the Lord calls you home, this trial and tribulation in your life won't be there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So you might not find joy in the death of a child, or a death of a parent, or a cancer, or an illness, or a loss of a job, or something that happens in your life that's traumatic.
Right. Yes.
But your relationship with God is still there. And that, Christians, I think, have lost that focus. Have lost that looking at the scriptures. This is only a temporary situation we're in.
Right. Even if it's phenomenal and amazing and stainless.
Yes.
It's still just temporary.
Still just temporary.
Good stuff. Yay! Well, thanks.
That might be actually be one that we added to that ends up. I don't know if you want to share your story that way or not, but
Would you redo that first segment about where you said he made you realize something?
Which part?
Right after the segment ended, you started in. You said
I asked you about how
you were angry about like having to redo this again.
Oh, okay.
But you said you were pissed off.
Oh, I was.
And you're going through all this
pissed.
crap. So just say that segment again. So without those two words.
Oh, right.
Going through this crap and being pissed off. And then you can edit that.
Because I wasn't thinking. I was like, "Oh, we're done now. We're just chatting."
So start out like something you just said made me remember. Like,
okay.
All right.
Okay.
And
I'll be a little bit more.
Why I asked you the question? Because my question was, well, how did you feel? I mean, going through you didn't smoke. People
Right.
who smoke should have the ones who have this type. How did you feel after that? Like, what was the
felt
response?
Unfair. I was confused at first, and then that turned into anger, and I was very angry. And it got to a point where I could either stay angry or I could just say, okay, fine, whatever you want. I'll do it your way. However you want this healing to be, whatever the answer is, I will go with it.
Yeah.
And I was really unhappy with what it was because it wasn't what I wanted. But I went and I accepted it because I trusted him. As scared and as terrified as I was, I had to let go, even though I didn't have control.
Right.
And letting go of that control, I didn't have control either way, but it felt like I had control.
Yeah.
So
As
I had
long
to
as
let
you
that
were
go.
determining your path,
Exactly.
it felt like you had control.
Yes.
But you really didn't.
I didn't have any control.
Yeah. So how did that, as you went through that, it wasn't just one time
Right.
that you said, oh, okay, I'll go this way and give God. I mean, it was, how many times do you think you had to turn it over to God?
I had to say it to myself over and over again. I had to say it when I got my test results. I had to say it when I showed up for my first day of chemo. I had to say it on my first day of radiation. I had to keep reminding myself, trust and let go. And it was a process. It's like exercising that muscle of faith. I had to really push through, surround myself with it.
Did it seem like the first time was the hardest, and as you went down through the number of times, did it get easier?
It got easier. It got easier. It was never easy, but it definitely got easier. And I found myself being able to share with others. I would bring my Bible and my books to treatment, and if I saw people just sitting there, just twiddling their thumbs, I would say, "Hey, you want something to read?" I brought like 4 extra books and magazines, and I figured, hey, this is my strength. It's not of my own, but I'm using, strength with my faith. So let me share it with other people. And if I didn't let go, I would have still had a bitter attitude during the whole process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many people do you think you were able to touch during that time, during those treatments?
I'm not sure, but I definitely know 2 for sure.
But I mean, the 2 that you gave materials out, like how many?
I shared my Bible with 2 people, and one woman even, I gave her my phone number, and her husband would even call me and talk, and then they were thrilled, and they would share like materials with me, and so every time we saw each other, it was like, my chemo buddy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was special.
During that time, was there anyone that you ever went to hand materials to that they said, no, absolutely not, don't give that to me?
There was, but I still prayed for them,
Yeah.
and they would still smile when we saw each other in the room.
Yeah.
They just weren't willing for that, but I still think it.
But they didn't like bum rush you and beat you up or knock
No,
you down?
not at all.
They were still cordial and
They were
nice.
still cordial and
Yeah.
nice and human.
See, that's what in my own life, when I go to share a track or a word of encouragement, it's immediately that, oh, don't do that.
Oh,
You
really?
might offend someone.
Well, that's true.
Or
People
what
get-
if they get upset?
True.
or embarrassment. It's like this, I almost call it a 3-second rule. Like if you don't do it in the first 3 seconds, that the Holy Spirit says, hey, talk to that person, I won't do it. But very rarely I'll have someone say no thank you, but I've never had anybody tear it up and throw it back in my face.
Right.
I've never had anybody take a swing at me. But in our minds, it's this thought of, should I or
I don't want to offend anyone.
Right.
Let me be politically correct.
Yeah, let me be politically correct, or let me just, I don't want to step on anybody's toes. But the more you do it, the easier it does become, because you realize the significance of it. You realize the impact it had on your life. It was helping you go through what you were going through.
Right.
But when, I don't know, it's our society today, the politics that we're in, the religion, judge not lest you be judged, that when God has done great things for us, we keep it to ourselves.
That's true.
And it's good to share it with others.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why I call this handling life. I'm not trying to rewrite scriptures or bring a different angle to it. But I'm just trying to get people to realize that everything that is in the scriptures, it does apply to our life. And if we will use those things, it will help us handle our life better.
In so many different areas.
So many different areas.
Like money, pride.
Your personal, your professional, your financial, your physical, and your spiritual life will be so much better if you apply God's word to your life.
It's the handbook to life.
It's the handbook to life.
Best self-help book on the market.
Absolutely. I have not found a self-help book that you can find a principle in that you can't trace it back to a Bible verse.
Absolutely, totally agree. Yep.
So it is the best self-help book. But perception-wise, in a lot of people's minds, in my mind even, for a long time, was that it's a book of laws and rules and regulations, and if you give into it, it's going to be a life of boredom.
And it constrains.
Putting you in a box.
Right.
What I have found is the more control I give to God in an application in my life, the more expanded my life becomes.
And you just feel more free. Yeah.
You do.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you for sharing with us, too.
Thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.